What's up, guys? Logan here, and today we are back with another video. It's been a while. It has been a while, admittedly, since I've uploaded a YouTube video. Actually, I'm more focused on TikTok right now, which is where I'm starting to get a little bit of traction. I'll probably plug it in somewhere. You can follow my TikTok at Logan.Toth. I'm almost at 5,000 followers at the time of recording this video, so make sure you follow your boy. I don't post sports content, but I do post comedy videos. I don't think I'll ever branch out into sports content on TikTok because I feel like it's such a small, fan base almost. Like it's hard to grow your fan base being a sports TikTok page. As a comedy TikTok page is a lot easier, and because TikTok's basically full of comedy. It's basically like Vine 2.0, but I wasn't around for Vine, at least the popularity of Vine, but I'm here for TikTok, and I'm starting to grow my page a little bit, so make sure you follow that. I'd really appreciate it. But in today's YouTube video, we're going to be going over, I did a lot of work on this video. We're going to be going over a ton of NFL draft quarterbacks coming up, or NFL quarterback prospects for this upcoming draft. I went over a ton of quarterbacks, and I put in a lot of work, watched a lot of film, and this is basically everything I got out of it. So I have my laptop over to the left of me. If I look over here, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I have strengths and weaknesses for every single player, and oh man, I put so much time and effort into this, and I'm probably only going to get like 20 views, but let's see what happens. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get started. I decided to put players in almost like tiers, how I see each quarterback panning out. I'll explain where I see their NFL floor and where their NFL ceiling is. I'll try and go in as much detail as I possibly can on every quarterback. Franchise quarterbacks, obviously, I got Joe Burrow in this tier. His strengths are his absolutely insane accuracy and ball placement. It's top-notch. It is top tier. Honestly, I don't think I've seen better accuracy or ball placement overall. It's pretty special what Joe Burrow's managed to do, and his overall improvement from his from the previous year to this year has been fantastic. Put up one of the very best college football seasons of all time. He's got great mobility. I love his mobility. It's very underrated, I'd say. Almost like underrated in the sense that I think he's more thought of as a pocket passer, but he can move. He's got pretty solid mobility. Makes throws on the run. I really like what Joe Burrow can bring to the table. He's got great pocket presence, and he plays very well in big moments and under pressure. And those are all fantastic traits for an NFL quarterback. He is pretty much a surefire NFL quarterback, but again, there are no guarantees, but these traits are all phenomenal, and it looks very likely that he's going to be a franchise quarterback. I do have some weaknesses, though, but they're all very minor. I'd say it's almost nitpicking, but they are weaknesses nonetheless. Average arm strength, it's not great. I think arm strength overall is pretty overrated in my opinion. If you have a great arm, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a special quarterback. But if you have an average arm, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a bad NFL quarterback. Like, it's such an overrated portion, but it matters. But I don't think it matters as much as people make it out to be. He's 24 years old, which means he has a lot less time to develop, and this is a problem. This is a legitimate concern. 24 years old, I believe I think Mahomes is younger than him, and he's been in the league for 2 or 3 years now, at least starting. Josh Allen's younger, Sam Darnold. There's a ton of quarterbacks that are already younger than Joe Burrow, meaning that he has a lot less time to develop, and this is not good. It's not ideal at all. And my final thing is that I believe he throws up too many jump balls, and that can be a concern. the thing is, he can get away with it because he had great receivers at LSU. But on top of that, because his accuracy and ball placement is so good, it's almost always going to be caught. That can be a concern at the NFL level because the talent level for defenses goes up tremendously. So I do think Joe Burrow overall is a very good quarterback, likely an NFL franchise quarterback, but these small nitpicks and these small weaknesses could deter him from being a franchise quarterback. But I do think that he's likely going to be a franchise quarterback in Cincinnati, where he likely will get drafted. Number 2, I'm a little bit lower on Tua now than when I started, but I do have Tua as my next quarterback I'm going to go over. I believe he has the best release in the draft class. It's pretty special. It's phenomenal. Despite the fact that he's a lefty, his release is insane. He can get a ball out like no other, and that could really help him at the next level. Typically, accuracy in the short to intermediate levels is good. Typically, obviously, it's not great. I'm going to go over the weaknesses later, but overall accuracy, he can get the ball where he needs to in the short to intermediate levels, but it's not great, but it's good, and it's good enough. And overall decision making is pretty good. Obviously, when you play in Alabama, you don't have to make a ton of tough decisions, but from what I saw on tape, his overall decision making was pretty solid. Weaknesses, and I do believe these are all legitimate concerns again, but I think all his strengths equate to him being a potential franchise quarterback. Overall ball placement is not ideal. He does put the ball in places where his receivers can make plays. He can throw his receivers open. He can do this, but it's not consistent enough to be a surefire NFL quarterback, if you know what I mean. Again, I don't really like his overall deep ball. Like, obviously, when you have guys like Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, it's hard to overthrow them, but he can. He can overthrow them. He can underthrow them. His overall deep ball is not that good. I don't really like his arm strength. His arm strength is good, and I think his arm strength is good, but I think his release kind of, the way he released the ball makes it so his arm strength is better than what it actually is, if you know what I'm saying. Because his release is so good, it makes his arm talent look better than it is. Obviously, I think the main concern I have with him is that he comes from a fantastic system, and he has NFL talent all around him. And, I mean, these guys are likely to be elite NFL players. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, they have Devontae Smith, Jedrick Wills, and an overall good offensive line as well. Alabama's a fantastic program, a fantastic college football program. And I do think that coming from such an elite group of talent, I think if he goes to a team like Miami, how's he going to fare with a really bad offensive line and against better defenses and with a worse receiver core? I think this is a legitimate concern. I do like his overall strengths. I think that those strengths he has can make him be a viable franchise quarterback in the NFL, but I think the weaknesses are also a little bit too concerning. But overall, I think Tua has potential in the NFL, but he's not a surefire player. Next on my list is Jordan Love. I think he has the best touch in the NFL draft in this draft class. It's pretty special what he can do. Having touch, I think, is a really important trait in the NFL. Guys like Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, some of the best talents in the NFL throw with great touch. It is a necessary trait to have. He makes a lot of special throws, and this is a really, really important. Making these special throws and having, it's pretty special what he can do. He has some of the best arm talent in this entire class. I don't think it's the best, but I think that his overall arm talent is special, and it doesn't come around very often with a player of his caliber. Obviously, he makes these really special throws. I think with that, he has the highest ceiling in this draft class. He plays pretty well under pressure. He does a lot of great things. He has some great traits. And to me, I think that he has a high ceiling in the draft class because of these phenomenal traits. He does have some weaknesses, though. I think overall accuracy is spotty. It's not fantastic, but I think overall he does make accurate throws. He can throw his receivers open, something that some other quarterbacks I'll be going over later on in this video can't do. He does have the ability to throw his receivers open, and that is another necessary trait for an NFL quarterback. But overall accuracy is inconsistent. It can be spotty. Another thing I don't really like about Jordan Love is that decision-making could use some work. However, I think it is way overblown by the national media. A lot of his interceptions weren't his fault. A lot of them resulted from bad routes from his receivers, drops, arm punts. A lot of his interceptions were not his fault, despite his high interception number. Really, a lot of it he couldn't help. He has to play hero ball a lot because the team around him at Utah State was awful. They were horrible. Some of the worst offensive line play I've ever seen, and some of the worst wide receiver play I've ever seen. Jordan Love had to pretty much do it on his own at Utah State, and I think overall a lot of his weaknesses from a lot of the national media overblows his weaknesses. And I do think that he's likely to be a franchise quarterback. Obviously, I think he has the highest ceiling in the draft class, but a really low floor. I think he will be an NFL franchise quarterback if he goes to the right team, if he goes to the right system with good players around him. And luckily for him, he played at Utah State, which means he's probably going to go in the mid-draft or in the mid-round of the first round. So he's probably going to go to a really good system, and he's probably going to learn from somebody, and he's probably going to end up being a really good quarterback moving forward. Next on my list is Jake Fromm. It's quite simple with Jake Fromm. He's good at everything, but he's not great at anything. He's a very limited quarterback. I think his overall accuracy, decision-making, and ball placement, it's pretty solid. It's nothing special, but it's solid. There's potential there. His arm strength is not... wait, did I say his arm strength was solid? It's not good. His arm strength is not good. It's below average, and I think that that is a legitimate concern. I don't think it's as important as people make it out to be, but it is a legitimate concern. Obviously, I like his overall accuracy and decision-making, but again, he's not great at anything. Like, nothing about his game is special, and that's a concern. My guess is that, if anything, he's likely to be a high-quality starter rather than a franchise quarterback. He won't elevate the play of anybody around him. But again, kind of like Jordan Love, if he gets thrown in the right system, I think he can be a very solid, high-quality starter. Unlike with Jordan Love, I think Love could be a franchise quarterback, but I think that Jake Fromm could be a quality starter. He won't elevate the play of everybody around him like Jordan Love could, but I do think that Fromm, while a limited quarterback, has some solid traits to be a starter in the NFL. Next on my list is Justin Herbert, a guy that I'm not really a huge fan of. I don't think he will be a franchise quarterback. Could be a starter, but I don't really see it. I'm going to go over some strengths and weaknesses that I like about Justin Herbert, or strengths I like about Justin Herbert, and the weaknesses that I don't like about Herbert. I think his strengths, he overall has the best arm talent in the class. Great arm strength. He can make a lot of special throws. Some throws that are pretty fantastic. Throws that not many other quarterbacks can make. So I like his overall arm strength, and I think that is easily his best trait. He's a smart player and typically makes decent decisions. Not great, but typically makes decent decisions. He can leave plays open on the field, but he makes a lot of great highlight reel plays. And that's important for a team that really needs a player to bring in fans. A guy who can make the highlight plays. And I think that is important. And I think some NFL teams do value that. Weaknesses, his overall ball placement is not good. And I think that is easily his worst weakness, is that very rarely on tape does he throw his receivers open. Very rarely does he put the ball in the perfect spot. And that is a really bad thing. As an NFL quarterback, you have to be perfect. You have to put the ball in the spot. You have to throw your receivers open, throw them in stride, and Justin Herbert simply does not do this, and that's bad. He does it in like in like the short range, but very rarely does he go across the middle. It'll hit his receiver, but the receiver will have to stop, make an adjustment in order to keep going down the field. Very rarely does he throw his receivers open, and that's a big problem. Let me go over some other weaknesses here. He comes from an offense that runs a lot of screens, and with this, it leads me to believe that Oregon really doesn't trust him to throw the ball down the field, and that's a concern for a guy who's supposed to be one of the very best quarterbacks in this draft class. There are other quarterbacks who do have this great arm talent, but they come from an offense that runs a ton of screens, and they just don't work in the NFL. And this is exactly what I see in Justin Herbert. Obviously, he didn't show any progression from his junior year to senior. I liked his junior year tape. I thought overall it was pretty solid, and he looked like a franchise quarterback. But this year, it almost looked like regression, and that's not good. Obviously, when you come from an offense from a lot of screens, it almost never translates to the NFL. But I think that he can be a guy who can go to a small market team and put butts in seats, and that is important. Whether he will give you long-term success, I don't think it's likely. I think he could have a couple of decent years in the NFL, and you could make a solid team around him, but I just don't see him being a franchise quarterback. I don't think he can elevate the play of anybody around him. Moving on to my next quarterback is Jacob Eason, and I think that this is a guy I probably watched the most tape on. He was a guy that it took a while for me to grasp what I wanted to find out of him for some reason, so I had to watch a lot of tape on him. And here's what I got. Really good arm talent. I like his arm strength. It's probably one of the better arms in the class, up there with Jordan Love. Not Justin Herbert level, but Jacob Eason, second or third best. It's a toss-up between him and Love, I'd say. He can throw his receivers open, unlike Justin Herbert. Excuse me. And that's a good trait. It's spotty, but at least he can do it. I didn't see it with Justin Herbert. I saw it with Jacob Eason. He can throw his receivers open, and he typically throws a pretty solid anticipation. And those are good traits to have as a NFL quarterback. Weaknesses, decision-making is poor. It's not good. It's something he really needs to work on. I'm going to elaborate this moving forward. He has good traits, but again, it's way too inconsistent. His accuracy is, again, it's spotty. It's not great. It's inconsistent. But he does have those traits where he can throw his receivers open, and he can throw a solid anticipation, and he has this great arm. And those are all great traits as an NFL quarterback. Things that I really don't like about Jacob Eason, I think this ties into the decision-making aspect, is that too often he throws across his body when he doesn't need to. Obviously, in college, the hashes are wider, but typically he'll throw from the right hash over to the left sideline, and it'll almost always be a pick. And that is a really bad trait to have. It happens way too often from what I saw on tape, and that doesn't translate to the NFL. Another thing that I really don't like, and I think this is easily his most frustrating trait, and this will get frustrating with NFL fans to whatever team he gets drafted to, I can guarantee it. 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, he will throw like a 2-yard drag route, 2-yard dump off, and it won't be a first down. This happens way too often. It is frustrating. It's so frustrating when you have a guy who has these great traits, a great arm, and he has the ability to throw his receivers open. Just check down the ball on 3rd and 5s and 3rd and 6s. It happens all the time, and it's so frustrating. This ties into the decision-making aspect. When you have guys open down the field, why would you take your checkdowns? Defense has caught onto it pretty easily, and Jacob Eason struggled moving down. Jacob Eason struggled as defenses started to crack down on this. It is not a good trait to have. It's a really, really, really bad trait to have, and it'll get frustrating with teams pretty easily. So, while Jacob Eason has traits, I really don't see how this can translate to the NFL level. Moving on is Nate Stanley from Iowa. Stanley, his best trait is that he is elite at the quarterback sneak, which is a really odd trait. It's a really odd trait to be elite at. But it's true. It'll be 3rd and 2. Usually on sneaks, you go for it on 3rd and inches, 3rd and shorts. But 3rd and 2, if you give it to Nate Stanley, he'll likely get the first down, which is a really odd trait to be good at. But that's what he's good at. Overall, solid arm talent, I'd say. It's kind of like with Jake Fromm, but where he's good at everything, but not great at anything. But I think Stanley has a better arm and can be more accurate, but I question decision making. I think that is why I have Stanley a little bit lower than I do with Fromm. But I think they're both similar quarterbacks, where you can potentially build a team around Stanley, but I don't think he can be a franchise quarterback. I think that it's weird for a quarterback's best trait to be the quarterback sneak. And if your best trait is to be good at a quarterback sneak, that's not really a good thing. You should be good at something else. Or your best trait should be accuracy or decision making. It shouldn't be the quarterback sneak, and that's kind of what deters me from Nate Stanley, and that's why I don't really see him as a franchise quarterback. While he does have solid arm talent and he's good at the quarterback sneak, this will get picked apart pretty easily in the NFL. I just don't see it happening. Traits are there. Again, I think that his game will get picked apart pretty easily and he'll be a backup in the NFL. Moving on, Steven Montez. I love his mobility and arm talent. I think he has some of the best mobility in the draft class, and he's a pretty athletic player. Again, the arm talent is there. He can throw the ball down the field pretty well. He's got a pretty solid arm, but the weaknesses, poor accuracy, not great, poor decision making, and not great accuracy, and those weaknesses are all those are concerning, incredibly concerning. He's likely to be a backup in the NFL, but I do think he's a guy that can make those highlight plays and come in and be a solid backup in the NFL. I love his mobility. I think his overall athletic ability is pretty solid, and I think that's where NFL teams will likely give Steven Montez a shot, and that's why I think Montez could work as a backup and maybe even as a short-term starter, but as a long-term franchise starter, I don't really see it. Next, we got Bryce Perkins from Virginia, another guy whose mobility I really like, and I like his overall short accuracy, and his intermediate accuracy is not that bad either. Bryce Perkins is a really odd quarterback because I can't really find anything on him. There's not a whole lot of good scouting reports on him, at least from what I saw. Not a whole lot of tape on him either, but I did what I could. Weaknesses, I think he throws up 50-50 balls too often. It's another problem I had with Joe Burrow, but I think Perkins does it more. Typically, he's bailed out by his receivers quite a bit. His mechanics and throwing motion definitely could use some work. His throwing motion is really odd. It's long, and it's his overall his throwing motion, mechanics definitely need some work. I think he's a developmental quarterback. I think he could be a backup in the NFL, and he does have starter upside and starter material. I love his mobility. I think that he's a guy that a locker room could get behind, and he could rally a team to a couple wins. And I think that's pretty important. Bryce Perkins, overall, I think I liked him. I just don't think NFL teams will give him a shot. There's good traits here, but overall, I think with the poor mechanics and the fact that he throws up 50-50 balls, I do think that NFL teams won't really give Bryce Perkins a shot. Moving on, James Morgan from FIU. James Morgan is one of the weirdest quarterbacks, I'd say, in this upcoming draft class. I really like him in the short game. I think in the first 8 yards of scrimmage, he works the field pretty well. And that's a good thing to have as a potential game manager and as a field general. I think those are important traits. He's got a pretty solid arm, too. He can throw the ball downfield when he needs to, but his best work comes within the first 8 yards of scrimmage. Weaknesses, I cannot lie when I say this. If I was an NFL organization looking at James Morgan tape, I'm scared every time he throws the ball 8 yards down the field. His mechanics are really poor, and if I'm scared of him throwing the ball 8 yards down or farther than 8 yards down the field, I don't know if that's a guy I want. I think he's a backup quarterback, nothing more, nothing less. I like his arm talent, though. I think he's going to be a developmental quarterback, and I think there will be an NFL team that will draft him and give him a shot. But I just don't see it happening. Again, I like the traits he has. I like the fact he can work the short game, and he has a pretty solid arm. But decision making, and again, I don't like his decision making. He's a developmental quarterback, but if I'm scared every time he throws the ball 8 yards down the field, I'm just not sure if that's a quarterback I want leading my team. Moving on, Jalen Hurts. I don't like Jalen Hurts at all. I think he is the most overrated quarterback in this draft class by far. And it's really not. It's not close. I don't think I've ever, outside of Johnny Manziel, before I was really, into scouting quarterbacks and watching film, I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback more hyped for a player who's just not good in Jalen Hurts. Strengths, I have mobility, and even then I don't think he's that fast, but I think he runs with solid power. Obviously he's fast, but I just don't think he's like a Kyler Murray fast or a Russell Wilson fast. It's almost like a Cam Newton fast, but slower in a way. I think he runs with solid power. That's about it. I like his overall maturity, and I like the fact that he can make these highlight plays. Obviously, coming from Alabama and having to wait a long time to get a shot. On top of that, he coming from Alabama, transferring, all of that just takes maturity. His whole situation takes a lot of maturity, and I like that. That plays a part into his intangibles and his leadership. I do think that those are important traits for a quarterback. He has these traits. He has strengths, but his weaknesses are really, really bad. He's a poor decision maker. Below average arm, spotty accuracy, and he takes off to run too often when players are open. These are all horrible traits in the NFL. I haven't made a player comparison, but I did mention Johnny Manziel earlier. And this is basically Johnny Manziel 2.0, but with not nearly as much hype. I believe he's the beneficiary of he is the beneficiary of a great system and great play calling, great talent all around him. Unlike a guy like Kyler Murray, who elevated the player elevated everybody around him. Unlike Baker Mayfield, who elevated everybody around him at Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts was elevated by everybody around him and didn't elevate anyone around him. That's scary. That is not good. I think Jalen Hurts is the most overrated quarterback in this draft class. I really don't think he's even an NFL starter. Might be a backup, but I think he is easily the most overrated quarterback in this class. Next is Cole McDonald. McDonald is he's weird. He is the weirdest quarterback in this draft class. Some strengths I have for him is that he works well in the short game, he's decent under pressure, and he has solid intangibles. His weaknesses, accuracy is wild. You literally don't know what you're getting out of Cole McDonald. If you watch his highlights, he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the draft class, and he looks slept on. But if you watch his tape, it's like, what? It's so odd. Because he'll throw the ball, like every other time he throws a deep ball, it'll be overthrown by a mile, or it'll be a perfect throw. You really don't know what you're getting out of Cole McDonald. It's almost like it's like Ryan Fitzpatrick, which is a weird NFL comparison, but I think Macdonald's worse than Fitzpatrick because I don't like his decision making. Accuracy and decision making is absolutely wild. You literally don't know what you're getting, and I think his throwing motion is really awkward. It's really elongated, and it's really long, it's like Blake Bortles-esque. And if you mix Blake Bortles and Ryan Fitzpatrick together, I just don't think that's good at all. So I think that's concerning, but he does make highlight plays. He does have a pretty solid arm, and I think he's a backup in the NFL, but you literally don't know what you're going to get out of Cole McDonald. He seems like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type player where he's pretty much like the next Fitzmagic, but I think he's worse. So overall, McDonald, probably one of the weirdest players, one of the weirdest quarterbacks in this draft class, but I think there will be an NFL team that'll give him a shot, whether he's drafted or whether he goes undrafted. I'm willing to bet there will be an NFL team that will give him a shot. Next on my list, we're almost near the end of this list, actually. Anthony Gordon, strengths I have for him, overall accuracy is solid. He does have pretty solid ball placement, and obviously coming from an offense where he's asked to throw the ball a ton, the fact that he's accurate, I think that's a good trait to have. Weaknesses, he has a really weird throwing motion. I don't really know how to explain it. I don't like it at all. Obviously, another weakness he has is he comes from the Mike Leach offense. And almost never do Mike Leach, or players from the Mike Leach system, quarterbacks from the Mike Leach system, rather, translate to the NFL level. It almost never happens. And I'm really not a guy who likes to evaluate the system over the player, but you can see that Anthony Gordon, the guy who was just asked to throw the ball a ton, usually it was just quick little swing routes and screen routes and underneath routes, not really asked to throw the ball a whole lot down the field. With Anthony Gordon, takes checkdowns too often, and his decision-making is poor. A lot of the interceptions he throws are his fault. They're just stupid decisions that not a lot of other players would make. So to me, Anthony Gordon, NFL backup, and not really much more to his game. Next is Kevin Davidson from Princeton. And this is a guy that a lot of people don't really know about. He comes from Princeton, which is an Ivy League school, and very rarely do players from the Ivy League make it to the NFL. Obviously, you see with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who came from Harvard, of all places. And Fitzpatrick is a really smart guy. With Kevin Davidson, his strengths on the field are that he has some really underrated arm talent. Probably one of the most underrated arms in the class. I don't think he's going to get drafted, but I think he'll likely be an undrafted player. The arm talent is pretty underrated, and he can make a lot of special throws. It makes, with this arm talent, it can make him throw with good anticipation. It can make him throw his receivers open, and that's some good solid traits for him. Weaknesses, mechanics need work. Really needs a lot of work. I was paying attention to him the most at the combine. He's a guy that there's not a whole lot of film on him, but so I paid attention to him while I looked at the combine, and it's pretty obvious that his mechanics need a lot of work. His overall accuracy is spotty, and his decision making is not good either. And those are not good traits to have, but he's not great under pressure either. And I think that overall, Kevin Davidson is a developmental quarterback who doesn't really have a lot of NFL upside. But I think, again, there will be an NFL team that will take a chance on him because he does have that really good arm strength. And it's probably the most underrated arm in the entire draft class. So my guess is that he is a developmental quarterback who might even get a couple NFL games in. But we'll see what happens. Not a big fan of Kevin Davidson. And my final quarterback that I watched tape on is Shea Patterson. And you'll know from his game that he's overall probably the most inconsistent quarterback in the entire draft class. He's got good mobility. I'll give him that. That's really the only thing that I truly like about Shea Patterson. I think he does make some solid throws with some solid ball placement. He can throw his receivers open. But again, it's really inconsistent. Not a great arm. Accuracy, again, spotty. Just overall a very inconsistent player. And I think he's likely to be a backup in the NFL. Oh, so with that, that'll do it for me. This was a long video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy. Subscribe for more content like this. Share the video with your friends and let them know about Logan Toth's YouTube channel. Once again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.